the motion stating my name on the notice paper relating to the use of aluminium cladding on government buildings.
And the question is that that motion be agreed to. Ms Lauder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We've had a lot of debate over the past few weeks about flammable aluminium cladding, and it's important to note right from the outset that not all aluminium cladding is dangerous. There's a particular type which is more flammable, in fact highly flammable, than other types, and it generally involves a sandwich of aluminium with polyethylene on the inside of it. This is the one that we've seen to be the cause of, for example, a tragic fire at Grenfell Tower in London. Over the course of the past few weeks in the debate, it's led to the need for a motion because this ACT Labor Greens government have once again demonstrated their contempt for the people of Canberra by neglecting basic safety and failing to monitor the use of aluminium cladding on buildings in the ACT. It's hard to understand why, when there's been such an awareness of fire risks posed by this particular type of cladding for quite a number of years, that the ACT Labor Green government has chosen to continue to install some of this cladding onto their own buildings. The time has come, Madam Speaker, where the government needs to be open and transparent and tell the people of Canberra what the government knew when they knew it and why the flammable aluminium cladding was approved, given the government was already aware of the fire risks on some ACT government buildings. Government should be upfront about the risks and what they're doing about it. In his ministerial statement on the 17th of August this year, the Minister stated that the ACT government has been actively monitoring the use of aluminium cladding for nearly a decade. However, the Minister couldn't tell Canberrans why they'd been monitoring the use of the cladding in that statement, how he'd been monitoring the use of the cladding, and what the ACT government may have been doing with the monitoring. Imagine that if the Minister could tell us these things, the ACT government would have been better able to ensure that any hospital planned for women and children would not have been built with this cladding. And of course I'm referring to the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children, where it's already been confirmed that 10 to 15% of the cladding, of the exterior cladding, is of this particular type of highly flammable cladding. The Minister has told us that since 2009, the ACT government has been working on specific measures to address the fire safety risks associated with external wall cladding, and that was in his statement of the 17th of August. If that's the case, why then does the ACT government find itself suddenly undertaking an urgent audit of aluminium cladding on all ACT government buildings? What exactly had they been doing since 2009 if all of a sudden now they have to undertake an urgent audit? Back in 2009-10, ACT officials raised the issue of external flammable wall cladding with other jurisdictions nationally through the Australian Building Codes Board. That was according to Mr Gentleman's statement on the 17th of August. The government haven't said what issues were raised, what the ACT government did to address awareness and compliance in the ACT following on from that. What did the ACT government do to proactively address their concerns on a local level? Because, as we all know, Mr Assistant Speaker, compliance is the responsibility of the ACT government. Why did it take a terrible, tragic 2017 fire to mobilise the ACT Labor Greens government suddenly into urgent action? What has been happening since the 2014 fire at Docklands in Melbourne, or the many other fires attributed to aluminium cladding? Why has it taken so long to conduct an audit of ACT government buildings? And why isn't it possible to do it more quickly, given that the government is itself the holder of all of that building information? Why has it taken so long to undertake a risk assessment when, in the Minister's own words, the government has actively monitored fire risks associated with aluminium cladding since around 2007? The government also said that since 2009, ACT Fire and Rescue has checked all plans for new ACT buildings, excluding houses with a floor area greater than 500 square metres, to ensure compliance. How then have some buildings continued to use this cladding? On the 12th of July, I sent an email to a Minister Gentleman asking around 23 questions. And as yet, I did not receive a response on things in that email of 12th of July on membership of the working group, terms of reference, duration of the working group, and if the report will be made public. But in his statement on the 17th of August, the Minister said, "The ACT government is committed to investigating the use of aluminium composite panels in Canberra." Does that mean they weren't committed a decade ago when the issue first arose, or in 2009, or in 2014 with the fire in Melbourne? Why are we suddenly committed to something we have known about for such a long time? It's not often I find myself agreeing with Unions ACT. In fact, I could probably list the number of times I agree with them with the fingers of one finger. They've called for an audit of cladding, specifically on Canberra's privately owned buildings. They've also called for the creation of a public register of all buildings. I'm unsure how it's possible that we cannot have this information already, given the building registers of everything that you have to do, development applications, certificate of occupancies, all of the inspections that must take place. There must already exist this type of information. Yet suddenly it's an urgent matter that the government have to undertake. Back to Minister Gentleman's statement that since 2009, ACT Fire and Rescue has checked all plans for new ACT buildings, excluding houses with a floor area greater than 500 square metres, to help ensure NCC compliance of wall claddings, amongst other fire safety requirements. How then was the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children built using aluminium cladding of this type? What mitigations were put in place for high fire risks when the switchboard at the Canberra Hospital caught fire? This is a building, this is infrastructure that we already know is ageing. There has already been a fire at the hospital this year, and yet, Mr Assistant Speaker, that cladding remains. The Minister for Health has stressed on many occasions that the cladding is safe. Why then is it being removed? If it's safe, it could stay. If it has to be removed, it's probably not safe. You can't have it both ways, Mr Assistant Speaker. If the cladding is safe, why does it have to be removed? I believe it should be removed. But the Minister for Health is trying to muddy the waters around this issue and is yet to provide a straight answer on the question when she keeps stressing that the cladding is safe. The Minister for Health claims that it's not safe to remove the cladding without having replacement cladding at the ready. Why then hasn't replacement cladding been ordered? Last week we were told replacement cladding has not yet been ordered. And we know now from other jurisdictions moving with urgency that there's a nationwide and in fact worldwide shortage of replacement cladding because of the demand. I've received some informal reports from some engineers that aluminium cladding where used for aesthetic purposes must be placed on a sound structure, and removal of that aluminium cladding would have no effect on the structural integrity of the building in the short term. Now, obviously, I am not a building expert, but we've yet to see reports from either minister explaining why the cladding cannot be removed in the interim. If it's so unsafe that it must be removed, why can it stay for who knows how long until replacement cladding is available? The matters that I raised today about the ACT government's poor form on the use of aluminium cladding in construction has some intersection with federal government responsibilities. Australia's National Construction Code is among the best and the strictest in the world and is determined by state, territory, Commonwealth governments and industry representatives. States and territories then adopt the National Construction Code into law. And the use of combustible cladding on multi-storey buildings is, to my understanding, against that code. I've been advised by some of my federal colleagues that the matter here is a matter of non-compliance and that regulation and enforcement, of course, is the responsibility of the states and territories. What we've fallen down with here, Mr. Assistant Speaker, is regulation and enforcement. The Commonwealth has no constitutional powers to ensure buildings are constructed according to the National Construction Code. And I note that the Prime Minister has asked all states and territories to audit their buildings for combustible cladding to determine the extent of the problem, which the ACT government have said that they are doing. In this regard, a significant issue may be that most jurisdictions outsource their regulatory responsibilities to private certifiers, and the compliance and enforcement systems may then vary. And to address this, the federal government has appointed 2 independent experts recently to examine broader compliance and enforcement problems within the building and construction systems and to determine best practice regulation. Mr. Assistant Speaker, earlier this month, the Senate Economics References Committee had a draft report which recommended the Australian Government implement a total ban on the importation, sale and use of the polyethylene core aluminium composite panels, as I've been referring to them, this aluminium cladding, as a matter of urgency. These materials are used in all sorts of applications, for example, signage, and some of the materials are made in Australia. There are a lot of other products that are also combustible that shouldn't be put on the outside of multi-storey buildings, for example, timber. And we're not going to ban all timber production or importation either. But what we are asking for is something that this government have already said last week when we had questions without notice. They said all we had to do was ask for these reports. We're asking for what the government has done to address the fire safety risks associated with the use of aluminium cladding in all ACT government buildings since 2009, what they've done to address the fire safety risks associated with the use of aluminium cladding in all private, commercial and residential buildings since 2009, what issues have been raised by ACT officials since 2009-10 with the Australian Building Code Board, why the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children was built with flammable aluminium cladding, why cladding is being removed from the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children if it is safe. And I'm also asking that the government provide the Assembly by the first week of the October sitting with all reports on the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children by ACT Fire and Rescue, the recommendations of the 2017 audit of all ACT government health buildings constructed that may have any part of aluminium cladding, table the audit report of ACT government buildings, the government's plans to mitigate fire risks and related security issues associated with existing aluminium cladding on all ACT government, private, commercial and residential buildings following the interim Senate Economics References Committee report on aluminium composite cladding. I commend the motion to the Assembly.
Question is that the motion be agreed to. Mr Gentleman.
Thank you.